All right, so I actually jumped way, way ahead because getting to the place where you're doing injections, right? You got a lot of work to do before you get to the place where you're actually being able to do injections. So I use this analogy that I call sequestration system design pentagon. And well, some of you probably remember in the 40s when the Pentagon was being built, the architects were tasked with maximizing the utilization of the space that they had right there. And that's exactly what we try to do on sequestration projects. You know, we want to maximize the use of our land surface, our subsurface reservoir space. So I like this sort of analogy. And we have these kind of 5 key areas that engineers that we need to do to do a design for a sequestration project. So cost estimation, permitting, our control systems, MVA, so this monitoring system we have to put together, and what's the infrastructure look like to get the CO2 into the subsurface. And then, but everything is filtered through this legal and liability sort of wall. We have to make sure that what we're trying to do is going to be able to be done from a legal and liability perspective. So let me give you a couple examples. That would include our capture system, pipeline, wellbore, and our reservoirs. Okay, so why will you be on a first name basis with your legal office? So you've got a team, and you might have a geologist that's working on the team. Charlotte has her peeps here, very bright students working with her. And also behind here, you can see this is a drill rig that we have. So that's a whole nother story in terms of what you're going to have to deal with in terms of your legal office. But let's say, for example, so Cap, you've got your project kind of started, and rumor gets out that you've got a little bit of money has come in from a federal grant. You're going to find that your geologist team member will be in your office almost instantly. And she's going to say, you know, Cap, you have got to do a seismic characterization on your site. You've got to do that. You've got to make sure that it's going to work properly. You've got to make sure you don't have any faults or fractures zones that you need to worry about. And so she'll convince you that you've got to do this. And you'll say, okay, okay, fine, just fine. What she won't tell you is some of the details which you, as the project manager, are going to have to get into, which is, okay, to do this seismic survey, you're going to have to run these lines over about 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 miles long. And these are trucks, as you can see here, that are slamming a hydraulic ram into the ground to put an acoustic wave into the surface, which somebody's going to put a geophone out and listen to those reflected acoustic waves. So you can imagine you're running these trucks over the surface, so you're going to have to go out there, you're going to have to get that landowners, depending on how many there are, to agree to let you run those trucks over the ground. And if you happen to damage something that's there, an irrigation pipe, some other infrastructure, wells, whatever it may be, you're going to be liable for fixing those particular problems. In terms of land ownership issues also, here's an example from a project that we've been working on for a number of years called FutureGen. This is back in Illinois, a small coal plant with CCS attached. Here's a case now where the injection well is located right there, and this is the subsurface, calculated subsurface bubble for the CO2. So this is a good situation where we've got 2 private landowners where we've got to negotiate subsurface storage rights to put the CO2 in the ground. But what's going to happen once you do this is that your geologist is going to come back and say, oh, you know what? I have got to do a 3D seismic survey at this property, and because it's so deep, I'm going to have to run this thing over this white area that you see right here. And so now all of a sudden, instead of my 2 sort of landowners that I've got to work with, I'm going to have to now get agreements with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe another 10 or 12 landowners in order to run that seismic survey. So it gets more complicated depending upon what you've got to do from a site characterization and monitoring point of view. Now, what other aspect in terms of land ownership might you think is important that I might want to avoid when you're siting a project like this? More broadly, public, right? Public lands. So be it a local, state, or federal landowners, if they have some portion of a property, that's going to be way more involved in order for you to get permission. There's intervention routes, all kinds of issues you've got to deal with if it's public-owned land. So when I'm doing sequestration projects, I typically want to try to find a place where I've got private or corporate landowners that I'm working with. That's the best sort of rapid pathway to success on some of those projects. So just briefly, so here's the principal legal hurdles that we're talking about. So these mineral rights issues, very complicated, CO2 storage deeds. If you don't have landowner cooperation, you're done. You're not going to get a sequestration project going. And we talked a bit about liability issues. And here's the couple of firms that are kind of stepping out in terms of having product offerings.